This is your AP Government video on FECA, the Federal Election Campaign Act. We're going to start going into a number of videos that talk about how campaign financing has changed over time. I've set up these videos to go in chronological order. So we're going to start with FECA, which was passed in the 1970s. FECA is the first major law that restricted how much money somebody could donate to a certain political campaign, particularly presidential elections, senators and representatives, or also the national political parties. So there's a couple of important things you need to know about FECA. It first set up the Federal Election Commission. The FEC is a group of commissioners which oversee federal elections. So that's the president, that's the House, and that's the Senate. So a lot of times candidates have to file disclosure forms of where they're getting their money and where they're spending their money. They also would have to abide by all federal laws. And if you believe that your opponent violated one of these laws, then you can file a form with the FEC and they will investigate that. So this FEC was created in the 1970s, and it created these candidate disclosure forms. Candidates who are running for federal office have to disclose where they're fundraising their money from, so where the money came from, and then how they're spending it. This is to make sure that federal elections are not getting money from unauthorized places and that they are spending their money on appropriate and legal ways of campaigning. The FECA Act in 1971 also created presidential matching funds. Because the cost of campaigning for a large election like the presidential election was becoming very, very expensive, they decided to offer a way for the federal government to help presidential candidates. Now, the way that this works is it would be a matching amount. So let's say that presidential matching funds, let's say there's $50 million. If you are a legitimate candidate for office for the presidency, that typically means that you would have to be a Republican or a Democrat. The federal government would give you $50 million to run if you chose to accept that money. If you did accept the matching funds, then you would only be able to fundraise a matching amount. So if the matching funds was 50 million, then you could privately fundraise another 50 million. That would then cap the amount of money you could spend at 100 million. Now, this is the only way then and today that a presidential campaign would be restricted on how they could spend money or how much money they could spend. So this is only for candidates who elect the presidential matching funds. And certainly since 1971, the amount of money offered by the federal government has gone up significantly. The problem is that in modern campaigns, candidates who are popular can far fundraise way more than what the federal government is willing to offer in presidential matching funds. So even if the federal government offers, let's say, $400 million, if you can fundraise more than $800 million, then there's no reason for you to take the presidential matching funds because it would automatically put a spending limit on your campaign. So FECA also imposes limitations on donations. So individuals who are going to donate directly to a candidate's campaign or to the national political party, the National Republican or National Democratic parties. Now, at the time, in 1971, these donations were $1,000 from each person per candidate per election. So if I had a lot of money, I could donate $1,000 to every single candidate I liked. That's presidential candidates, that is Senate and House candidates. The primary and the general election are seen as different elections. So if I was a Republican, I could donate $1,000 to every single Republican that's running, not just in my state, but in every state for the House, for the Senate, and for the presidency. And then in the general election, I can donate to the candidates there that I wanted to. It also limited political action committees. These are basically interest groups. The Political Action Committee is the portion of an interest group that can fundraise money and donate them to candidates. PACs could donate $5,000 to each candidate per election. So they can fundraise as much money as they want from their members and then give in $5,000 chunks if you're going to donate it directly to the candidate, to the national party, or per election. Now, if you are a really wealthy person and you have lots of money to spend in the election, you probably don't like that FECA limited you to your $1,000 donations. So there's going to be some changes to federal election laws.